recorded. We will be posting the recordings on boston.gov. We will also upload meeting minutes from our note takers to the website. And as I stated earlier, I certainly appreciate your attending this meeting this evening. As a reminder, the Reparations Task Force was formed via ordinance and is a public body. All meetings of the task force are subject to the open meeting law. We will make the chat available once we open the floor for public comment, and that will take place after the task force members have had an opportunity to hear the presentation from staff on the request for proposal, have discussed the proposal, and have entered a vote for either acceptance or not of the RFP that's being proposed. After that, we will then open it up for comment from the audience. I do want to say, and I want to thank and say as a precursor to that presentation, that we took into account the comments that were made at our July 13th meeting. The subgroup, along with members of the city staff, who I will mention shortly, entertained those, had a conversation with our legal counsels. And so we have come up with a document which we feel permits us to go forth with the task that was presented to us by the ordinance, which was adopted by the mayor and by which we were appointed to carry out. So we'll hear more about that in a moment. I will, once we go back in and I can see, I would like to acknowledge any and all elected officials that may be attending this meeting this evening. Right now, I can't see that, so I will wait until that appropriate time, and you may have to put your hands up so you can be allowed to speak at that time. So when I ask for that, I certainly would like to be able to acknowledge all elected officials that are attending this meeting. Again, I want to, the process that we've gone through here, we created a subgroup of the task force who diligently spent hours along with members of the city staff in preparing the RFP, discussing the RFP, getting input from various sources, and coming up with the product which we will present to you this evening. I want to thank my fellow task force members and members specifically of the subgroup, Lamercy Frazier, Dorothea Jones, Carrie Mays, and Natisha Mills. They were the members of the task force who worked diligently on the RFP. And then, of course, members of the city staff, RJ Singh, Lori Nelson, Maya Getter, and Marangeli Solis Cervera. So I want to thank them for that. As you see posted on the, here is the agenda, which I've done the call to order. I'm going to soon do a roll call of the members, and I'm going to, hopefully the co-host will help me, and so that, because I can't see everyone right at the moment, but I will be calling names, and if you will unmute them so that they can respond so we can get them recorded, we will do that. So I am, at this time, I am going to do a roll call of members of the task force. Denelson Fan.
Here.
Lamercy Frazier.
Here.
Dorothea Jones.
Here.
Carrie Mays.
Here.
Natisha Mills.
Here.
Damani Williams.
Here.
And Joseph Feaster here. I have a communication from George Greenwich Jr. Requesting a excuse absence because he is out of town and will not be able to participate in the meeting. So I will accept that as the chair, and we will mark the record accordingly with regards to George Greenwich Jr. Uh, Thank you very much. And now what we would like to do is to have the staff present to the task force its deliberations, findings, and presentation and proposal for the request for proposal. And that'll be done by Lori Nelson and RJ Singh. So Lori.
Good evening, everyone. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the task force and to the members of the community who have joined, and certainly to the City of Boston staff. Very quickly, I just wanted to give the current reality and present why we're here this evening. Again, after going through a process with the RFP subgroup, and again, Mr. Chair named them, but we want to reiterate those persons being Lamerchi Frazier, Carrie Mays, Miss Dorothea Jones, and of course, Miss Natisha Mills. They had at least 6 meetings. These meetings were 2 to 3 hours, by which they began to look at how a city of Boston should consider an RFP process, the scope of work, of course, and how we move it forward. This comes, as you all well know, particularly the community members who have journeyed with us after community meetings and public meetings that allowed for us to present the ordinance and why we are here, why the task force was appointed, and certainly their charge. And so we are excited about where we are and what will be presented this evening. The other piece that I will share very quickly is that this has come based on everyone's very thoughtfulness about some of the input heard from both the notes and from community, and what we have heard around how this should be shaped. And you will see as they deliberate, and what you will hear in the presentation going forward, that those considerations were also put into account. Again, I want to thank the members of the committee. The subgroup. I certainly want to thank the entire task force for their work and their commitment to the city and to this work, and certainly to the chair, Chairman Feaster, for leading us through this process and where we find ourselves today. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ajay, who has also been very much a co-lead and has worked on how we get us through the RFP process and where we are today. So Ajay, I now hand it over to you, and thank you in advance for your participation and support.
Thank you. Before RJ does come, and Lori, thank you very much. I underscore everything that you have said. I'd indicated I wanted to acknowledge our elected officials. I cannot see that. If our co-hosts or any if there are any elected officials on, if you could just raise your hand. I may not be able to see you, but one of the persons on the in fact, if you raise your hand, I would ask that one of the co-hosts unmute so that that elected official might give greetings. So are there any elected officials whose hands are raised? All right, if there are none, if throughout the meeting, if an elected official does come, please let me know so we can acknowledge them. RJ, fine. Can you present the RFP to the task force member?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lori, for that introduction, and grateful to be working with you and for all the work that the task force poured into this request for proposals. And thank you to everyone who's here participating in the meeting today. So really quickly, and task force members, this is just going through the highlights of that document we sent a couple of weeks ago that we sort of deliberated over and talked about and revised over many meetings. I just want to go through the highlights of what the document looks like that we're hoping to release. And want to couch it first in what the ordinance was. So the ordinance sketched out the task force work in 3 phases. And the first phase of that is to research and document the city of Boston's role in and historical ties to the transatlantic slave trade, and the institution and legacies of chattel slavery through the publication of a report on the history and the legacy of slavery in Boston. And so where are we now? Well, the Reparations Task Force has had, several conversations and including, the meeting in July 13th, and we took in that input and built a request for proposals seeking academic research partners to study the history and legacy of slavery. Total of $600K has been allocated as funding for the work ahead, and the RFP will release next Monday if we vote to approve, September 25th, 2023. And the deadline for submissions is November 6th, 2023, and research partners will be chosen by December 2023. Contracts for those services will run for 6 months, and each contract has an option for extension for an additional 6 months. And so that just means, we'll expect services without renewal to end by June 2024, if not by the sort of latest possible date is December for the report to come out. So what exactly are we asking people to do here that we're hiring? And so this is taken directly from the request for proposals. Broadly speaking, we're asking them to really get in the weeds and think rigorously about the history of the ties of Boston with the transatlantic slave trade and the connections of racial slavery in the global South to Boston's specific histories of slavery, the history of Boston and its African descended peoples and communities, the legacy of these historical ties within Boston's economic and social and political history, and the impact of all these phenomena on the American slavery in Boston, Black American freed people and their descendants in Boston, and the people of the city of Boston. And importantly, we also want to be thinking about City of Boston not only as an independent institution, but its relationship with other institutions, including banks, philanthropic institutions, medical institutions, insurance, real estate, religious, private institutions, civic and political institutions, and higher education. We really want to be comprehensive in how we're approaching this history. And, to be comprehensive, we have to make sure we're getting, experts in the way that historians are thinking about history here. And so the report will sort of take shape across these sort of 6 time periods that we've identified, which we call the sort of units of study that people are operating under. So you'll see 1620 through 1690, 1690 to 1750, and these run all the way to 1940 to the present. Research partners will be expected to accomplish 2 things in this report. The first thing is we really want historians to be telling this history in a new and groundbreaking way, really being honest in ways that maybe the secondary literature doesn't reflect. And so we're asking each of the sort of partners that join and sort of that we give contracts to produce an original work of historical research. It's supposed to be primarily based in primary sources. So for example, if someone was wanting to apply or an organization was wanting to apply to write for the unit of study 1, they'll write an original historical work that's based in that time period. We want them to use archival sources, original research, and bring to bear sort of that original narrative on the broad themes that are taking place in that history. Alongside that, each sort of partner for each unit of study will produce a comprehensive literature review narrative about the city of Boston's historical ties to the slave trade and the institution and legacies of slavery in each of the units of study they apply for. So again, going back to that example, if someone's applying to do that unit of study 1, they'll write the sort of comprehensive literature review of history related to, 1620 to 1690 and Boston's ties to transatlantic slave trade and slavery during that time. So that's what the report is going to look like, but what are candidates expected to submit when they're applying to this? We want the RFP, we want candidates who are applying to the RFP to do sort of 3 things in their applications. The first thing is we want them to submit a proposal for that original work of historical research. So really get into the weeds of what is the sort of proposed story you want to tell? Where are you going to get your sourcing from? What archives are you going to access? What is your awareness of this history thus far? How is it an original intervention into historical research that already exists? We also want a proposal for that comprehensive review of secondary literature. Are you demonstrating an experience and understanding and expertise of how that unit of study exists and what the broad themes are and what the events are that exist as it relates to the city of Boston and its relationship to the transatlantic slave trade and slavery during that time? And then third, for every sort of unit of study that someone's applying for, we want a work of previously written peer-reviewed research by the respondent. That's just to make sure, people are demonstrating an ability to be able to write and think clearly and rigorously about these histories. And so that sort of could be a research article, previously published article, a book chapter, but we really want that to make sure people who are applying for this unit of study are really demonstrating, oh, I've worked in this field before, I know how to write history and do this kind of historical research that the report is demanding. Now, units of study, we keep saying that. What does that practically mean? So again, it's sort of these time periods that constitute units of study. And if someone wants to do research for more than one unit of study, they got to submit a separate application for each unit of study they're applying to cover. And one contract will be awarded for each unit of study for a total of 6 contracts doled out. Whether or not an applicant submits for more than one contract will not be considered during the evaluation process, and a contract will be awarded to each proposer that submits the most advantageous proposal for the unit of study. So what does this mean? Let's give an example. So let's say I'm a historian and I run a research center. My research center wants to apply to cover unit of study 5 and unit of study 6. So that's the time periods of 1860 to 1940. And 1940 to the present. And I have a research team, and I really want to cover both of these time periods. I have the expertise. I maybe have another historian, another researcher on my team who has the expertise to really do this. So in order to compete and put in proposals for both of these units of study, my team and I will need to submit one full application for that first time period I'm interested in, with the proposal with all the sort of requirements. So the proposal for original research, the proposal for comprehensive literature review, the previously written work of peer-reviewed work, and the price proposal for the unit of study 5, and an entirely separate application for unit of study 6. The proposal for original research in 1940 to the present, same with comprehensive literature review, same with the peer-reviewed sort of previous publication, and the price proposal. The reason why we want to do this is so that every single sort of group, organization, whatever, every contract that we're giving out is for a specific unit of study, and we're evaluating those based on the unit of study that they're in. So once I've submitted my applications and the deadline has passed, the evaluation committee will review those submissions, and my application to cover unit of study 5 will only be compared to and evaluated against other applications to cover unit of study 5. And same for my application to cover unit of study of 6. It's only going to be evaluated against other applications to cover unit of study 6. And the fact that I submitted for multiple units of study is not going to play a role in whether I get 1 or 2 or neither of the proposals. And this is because we want the best sort of people who are going to write the best accounting of that history in each time period. And so what we're really looking for is people who are going to look clearly, honestly, and do the most rigorous, most effective, most groundbreaking work in each unit of study. And so we're going to evaluate each time period accordingly and independently. Now, how does that evaluation work? There's a lot of sort of discussion about how we can be thinking really critically, not just about what a traditional RFP evaluation process looks like, but really thinking across criteria and thinking about what we want in the applicants and the team that we're going to assemble. And so candidates are going to be evaluated on the standard stuff you'll see in a request for proposal. So that includes, just the quality proposals, the writing good, response to the scope of work. Did they actually respond to what we're asking for in the scope of work? Organizational background. Are they demonstrating, experience in this? But we also want them to demonstrate different kinds of expertise. The first one is expertise in that unit of study in that time period that they're applying to cover. Are they demonstrating they know, the events, the major themes that are taking place in that time period? We also want them to demonstrate a really sort of good expert level general knowledge related to the wide swath of history from 1620 to the present. Can you show that you understand sort of the broad themes across history, the history of the transatlantic slave trade and the history of slavery as it relates to Boston? And then finally, we also want you to demonstrate cross-historical expertise. If you're applying to cover a time period that's deep in the distant past, we want to make sure that you understand how that history relates to the present impacts and the legacy of slavery. And in the same way,
RJ, can I ask you to hold? Destiny Perkins has her hand up. Destiny, do you have your hand up for a reason? unmute yourself, Destiny, if you. Okay, I don't know. It's gone. Maybe it was sorry about that, RJ. I saw her hand up. I
No,
thought
all good. I'm glad you paused me. No worries, no worries. The cross historical expertise. So as I was saying, if you are, studying from 1620 to 1690, that sort of history of the city of Boston's role in the transatlantic slave trade and slavery, we want to know that those impacts and of the legacy of slavery that's happening, persisting in that later time period and now. And in the same way, if you're, applying to study the 1940 to the present, that present time, we want to know how you're connecting that to the history of the institution of slavery and ideologies that were birthed at that time, practices that were birthed at that time, and how it carries over. So that cross historical expertise. And then finally, we want people to be demonstrating and that they understand and they acknowledge and they recognize the real importance of community engaged historical research as well. That they know that everything in academic archives is not everything related to what we know about our history, and that there are people who have been doing public historical work in the community for decades, and elders who understand and have lived some of this history, stories that have been passed down that may not be acknowledged or may not have entered traditional institutions, research institutions, and we want to make sure that's sort of a practice that people are demonstrating they know how to take part in. And same in how they're sort of assembling their team. Do they know how to assemble a team that comes with experiences and comes with the knowledge and the background that are necessary to look really clearly, honestly, and rigorously at this kind of history? And so that all said, what does this report, what does the RFP, the people that we're trying to bring on, what does that mean for the work of reparations and the work of the task force? So as we said in the beginning, the first phase of RTF's work, phase 1, requires the task force research and document the city of Boston's role in and historical ties to the transatlantic slave trade and the institution and legacies of chattel slavery through the publication of a report. And without this sort of shared understanding and full accounting of the city's role in the history and legacy of slavery, we can't fully reckon with the injustices produced within those histories, and we can't begin to repair that harm. That sort of shared history of what the harm was is so important to the forming the bedrock, the foundation of how we're reckoning with that history and how we begin to repair. And so thank you to the task force again for their important work on this, and we'll continue into the production of this report, which will provide that shared understanding of the city's role. And with that, I'll stop presenting, and I want to pass it over to Chair Feaster for discussion.
Thank you very much, RJ. And certainly, once again, I want to thank the subgroup members and the City of Boston staff. I had the pleasure of attending some of the meetings. I tended to try my best to keep my mouth shut, but those who know me know that that's a task that's difficult for me to undertake. But nonetheless, when I did speak, I was hoping that I would add something to the conversation. But with this assembled group of the subgroup in the city, I believe we have a document which is worthy for adoption. So with that, this is the opportunity for the task force members ask their questions, make a statement, at the conclusion of which I am going to be looking for a motion from the task force with regards to accepting or not accepting or whatever with regard, but a motion with regards to the RFP. And then once that is done, then I will open it up for any further questions from persons in attendance at the meeting. I will say that from in preparation for the open session, what I'll be talking about, if you have questions about the process that we want to undertake, we will not be entertaining. This is for the actual document, as far as its substantive pieces, is for the task force members to discuss and deliberate on now. I will take, at the time when we open it up, if there's questions about how we will process it, who it will go to, things of that nature, be more than happy to entertain that But I don't intend for us to wordsmith the RFP. Each of the task force members, you did receive in advance the full RFP draft. And so now I open it up for questions, and if you raise your hand so I can orderly acknowledge you, I will do so. So if anyone from the task force wishes to speak, please raise your hand and I will acknowledge you. Harry?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So for me, I think my question is, what will the community engagement outreach process be for the RFP? And who is doing the outreach beyond like the RTF members? Just what that process looks like, or I don't know if it's been created yet, but yeah, that's my question.
Okay. I'm going to direct that back to I believe I have the answer to that, but I'm going to direct that back to Lori and to RJ. As far as the question is, how will we distribute the RFP to persons who might want to be respondents to the RFP? How broadly, how narrowly? Speak to the process.
Thanks, Chair. And Lori, feel free to jump in and add or correct me if I'm if I say anything. But Carrie, thanks for your question. I think a few task force members have given us names of people that they'd want and departments and institutions they'd want us to publicize to. We're also sort of made a list of departments and historians who are doing this kind of relevant work. And so definitely sending the RFP once if voted to approve on Monday to that sort of list that we've generated from sort of the collective. I think we're also making plans to have the RFP available at university centers, research centers. Also, all BPL locations will have printed copies of the RFP for community to be able to access. We'll have it available for sort of review online. As well as, as standard part of the RFP process, we'll have a bidders conference where people can ask questions about the RFP, and also a central contact email. And I will be the point of contact. The reparations at boston.gov address will be where people can send questions. And then at a certain date, we'll be able to release sort of thorough question answer to any questions that we've received that, people might generally have. Sorry, that was a bit fast. So big things are different sort of researchers that we've compiled over time from task force members and community members, public libraries and research institutions that may be sort of applicable that we've identified, BPL locations on the website digitally through sort of comms and social media campaign, and then anything, any other way we can get the word out, because once the RFP is out, it's public information, and we really want everyone and anyone who wants to take a look at it, review it, to be able to do that while it's still out.
Social media included, right?
Social media included.
All right. Any other questions from, okay, Lamerchi?
Yes, I had a question about geographic location of any of the proposal writers who submit. Is there a definitive region that the proposal writers have to be from to answer the RFP? Because many scholars who have done work on Massachusetts are now within the state. And so just need to ask that to understand who's eligible.
Well, RJ, do you have an answer from that? Was that discussed within the subgroup?
I believe it was. There's no residency requirement or geographic location requirement for people submitting, because we understand, academic sort of, so yeah, there's no residency or geographic requirement.
Good. I just wanted to ask that in terms of clarity for all of us.
Okay, so, all right. Does that answer your question, Lamerchi? Okay. Any other question from task force members? Gary?
I know my apologies if this is repetitive, if the question was already answered, but is there a timeline, or do we know after, hopefully, if we do all vote yes or no on this, when will the outreach begin? Will it begin as soon as it's posted on the website on Monday, or will it begin after, or like whatever time frame you guys have?
Chair, could I go
Yes,
ahead and answer
please.
that? We, you know, as soon as it's posted on Monday, we'll begin outreach. As soon as it's posted on Monday. We can't really sort of send the document out before that because it needs to go through a procurement process and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Got it.
Let me just, again, having participated in some of the meetings and two, read the document in its entirety. Let me just, because I think that we are very sensitive to two aspects from the task force. One, well, more than two, but one, carrying out our responsibility as outlined in the ordinance. That is our task. That is our responsibility. We intend to do that. Two, we want to make sure that we engage, have community engagement, and that will definitely take place by making sure that as broadly as we can, we will be disseminating the request for proposal. As noted in RJ's presentation, there's a component in the selection process which speaks to one's ability, one representing a proposer representing that they have the input and have participation on their team, and that could come in a number of different ways. We talk, it could be oral histories, it could be in terms of surveys, but that is a critical component for that selection process. Two, we want to get, as RJ emphasized in each of those times of study, we want to make sure that we get the most comprehensive, thorough, and knowledgeable individuals, organizations responding to this document so that we are able to discern and to present as a task force to the council, the city council, and to the community, a comprehensive understanding of how Boston participated in, benefited in terms of the slave trade as individual, as a government, as individuals, as organizations. We want to be able to, so we want to be grounded in the history. I will also add, being a lawyer, that in light of the most recent case regarding the school and the education issue, we have to make sure we have crossed our T's and dotted our I's. We just can't go out here viscerally and going on what we believe is the went on. Sure, there are many of us on here who know the history. We a lot of us have studied it. A lot of us have worked with it. A lot of us have handled legal cases in it. That still is not what we will use as a basis. We're not relying upon that. We're going to have the documentation and the sources so that everyone will be operating from the same page. So that's the way in which we're approaching this. And we want to make sure that throughout this process, there will be the community engagement. And that has been the hallmark of many of the members. I mean, they have been insistent on that. But as a general group, we all believe that that's important. So I wanted to give you the backdrop of how we've come to this. And so at this point in time, I'm going to ask for the last moment. Are there any other questions, comments from any task force member? Okay. Hearing none, I will ask for and be prepared to entertain a motion with regards to the RFP. So do I have a task force members prepared to make a motion? Well, someone speak up, but only, don't all speak at once. And I know none of you are bashful, so therefore, in terms of, let's see what motion we can get on the table.
I move that the current RFP be accepted for approval to be dispersed.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, okay, it has been properly moved by Lamerty Frazier, seconded by Dorothea Jones. Is there any question on the motion? Hearing none, I'm going to do a recorded, I want to record the votes of the task force members, so I'm going to ask you individually on that, grab my list, so I'm going to start. Dennison Fan, what is your vote?
Yes.
Lamerty Frazier,
Yes.
Dorothea Jones,
Yes.
Carrie Mays,
Yes.
Letitia Mills,
Yes.
Damani Williams,
Yes.
and I vote yes for it. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Then the RFP, as we have delivered, that was delivered to us and will be presented on Monday, is the RFP, which will be the RFP that is disseminated by this Reparations Task Force. So with that, thank you very much. Once again, task force members generally, subgroups specifically, City of Boston staff that worked with on us, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the community for the input and the guidance and suggestions that were given to us at our July 13th meeting. So with that having been taken, I am now, again, if you are Dorothea Jones, do you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do. Since this report is going to be, the RFP is going to be issued as of Monday, could all of the members of the task force please receive in the mail a copy of the request for proposal, as it's going to be going out to everybody that may be interested in reviewing or participating by submitting a proposal.
Okay, is your request that each task force member receive a hard copy?
Yes.
Okay, yes, that can definitely happen. We have no problem spending the postage in order to make sure that each of us get a copy of it. Thank you. All right, anything further from any task force member? Okay, if not, then I will open it up. Maya, are you the one who's going to control the Zoom and and acknowledging those who would like to speak?
I think Gary has a question, Chairman.
I'm sorry.
I believe Carrie might have had a question. Thank you, Natisha. Carrie, did you have a question before we get started with public comment or no?
Yes. Our task, just to make sure, in pursuit of the conflict of interest initiative or rule, are task force members allowed to be a part of the outreach process, a volunteer, or help within the distribution of how that process is going to go with the outreach?
No, there's no. The question of conflict would be if one was to be on one of the teams. That would be but as far as we should be in the business of outreach, Carrie. So no, that wouldn't be a conflict.
Yeah, I would agree. Carrie, I think your question might be about like if somebody reaches out to you and is asking for you to look over their application or asking specific questions, that would be a great place to point them in Ajay's direction. He's going to be the person receiving all materials. He'll run the bidders conference. So if anyone is asking you to like write a recommendation for them in their response, that would be inappropriate. So you were on the right track.
Yeah, and certainly thank you, Maya, for that underscore. I didn't see that as the question, but I would say, being that you're going to would be on one of the reviewers, Gary, then that's just what Maya said would not be the case. But from the standpoint of asking people to submit proposals and to be respondents, that is perfectly appropriate for all of us to do. We should encourage all the persons who we think have the capability of responding to do so. But as far as guiding them through, working with them, etc. Yeah, that would be a conflict for you. Okay. I'm going to now Good. I'm gonna call as I see hands up. If you want to speak, put your hands up and I will try to acknowledge you. I see Antonia Edwards has her hand up. So Antonia, you have the floor. If she is not, if she can't unmute herself,
Okay.
please unmute
Hi,
her.
good evening, everybody. How are you?
Oh,
And
yeah,
thank
fine,
you.
fine. Antonia, can I just for one moment, I failed to do this and I had the acknowledgement. If I could just ask you to hold for 1 minute.
Sure.
I noticed that Representative Brandy Fluker Oakley is on has joined the meeting some time ago. And if she is still on, Representative, I would allow you to at this time just to give a brief statement, greeting, whichever. So Representative.
Thank you so much, Chair Feaster, and not necessary, but I appreciate the acknowledgement. I just want to come on here and say thank you to the task force for all of their work and to the public who's been so engaged in this process. For those who don't know, I have filed a bill in the House related to reparations, as has Senator Miranda. And so I mentioned to Attorney Feaster, I just wanted to be in the loop as it can inform our statewide efforts as well. So really just here as an observer and with a heart full of gratitude for all of the labor from folks who have been involved in the process. So thank you, Chair Feaster, and happy to defer all the rest of my time.
All right, thank you very much, Representative. I see you speak just like being up on the hill, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Antonia, I'm going to come to you, my dear. Somebody unmute her? She's not unmuted. Thank you.
Hi,
Antonia,
can you hear me now?
We
Yes.
can. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Chair Feaster. How's everybody doing? I had one question. I know you said in the beginning that you didn't want to get into wordsmithing. However, I have one really urgent question to ask. The original RFP had Boston's American freedmen and freed women and their descendants. However, this new RFP references as being Black free people. And you also mentioned due to the SCOTUS ruling about the race-based initiatives are unconstitutional. My question is, what prompted to put the Black in there, because it could be strike down because there's no race-based initiative, and Justice Thomas considers it to be unconstitutional. Is there any way to take the Black out? Because this whole reparation proposal right now or initiative should not be race-based. It should be based on those who descend from chattel slavery, which are American freedmen. And so to put Black in front of it puts it in jeopardy of being struck down. And so what I'm asking, it wasn't in the original RFP, so I was just kind of confused as to why it was put into the final.
All right, I will have someone, Antonio, I have someone answer as to the why is how that came in. But what I will say to you, we vetted this through legal counsel as well, just to get a sense as to whether there would be some things. While I will mention that the decision as far as the schools could have implication, we are taking the position just generally, and I'll say scholars, legal scholars, etc., that we're making the case that case is narrowly defined with regards to the education. So my point is, we made the decision to do that. I'm going to ask those who are on the subgroup to speak to the specifics, just to answer your question, but I wanted to give you the broad scope in which we had looked at it. Does anyone on this on the subgroup recall? Because I remember that discussion came up and we changed it. Do we remember why?
Yes, it got changed to Black American freedmen. My suggestion or my recommendation was that we change it to African American freedmen, because there was a lot of controversy around white people also tying back their lineage back to slavery, because there was unfortunately a lot of mixing going on. So we just did that to be the specificity, to make sure that those who do have lineage back to slavery, who is not Black, can't be eligible. So we wanted to be super specific. I don't know how it got changed to freed people. But I do know it was originally, like you said, it was American freedmen and freed women. I think the freed people came from something about like freed like men, women, and LGBT IA plus Black American freedmen as well. So including that gender inclusivity as well. So I think that's why I got changed to freed people. But I think the freed people is supposed to be like like I said, gender inclusivity, or about that. But I know my suggestion was African American freedmen, so that there is absolute no confusion as to who we're talking about.
Okay, well, the only people that were chattel enslaved in America were Black people. And then in order for you to go politically based on our status for American freedmen, it has to say American freedmen because American Freedmen Act of 1865. So to change the verbiage puts us in a situation where if you add Black to it, it makes it race-based. And so we're just really concerned about it being struck down. But I understand what you're saying. I just want clarification.
Thank you, Antonia. Thank you for that. That may come up in the conversation from researchers may join you in that conversation. So thank you for pointing that out. I understand that a representative from Senator Miranda's office, Rochelle, is on. Can we, Rochelle, if you would like to speak on behalf of the senator at this time to make a comment, I certainly would entertain it. If you can identify so we can unmute you.
Find her. Yeah. Her hand is not raised. Just give me a minute. There's quite a few folks here.
She's here. She's able to unmute if they would like to.
Michelle? Michelle? Going once? Going twice? Right, well, if we get Rochelle on at a point in time, please bring it to my attention. Reggie Stewart has been, had his hand up.
I had Sharice next, so I'm going to unmute Sharice. And
Okay, Sharice, okay.
Thank you so much for this opportunity and space, the work you're doing. I just wanted to give a couple of comments. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Sharice Cryer. I'm a former Boston resident. In September 2006, I was sworn into the Massachusetts bar in the same area where slaves were traded. That left a lasting impact on me. I left Boston in 2009 and have done a number of things since then, but one of the things I'm most proud of is my reparations advocacy. If you Google my name, you can see what contributions I've made to this effort. I want to be clear, the idea to reestablish a Freedmen's Bureau came from me. I was also a catalyst for the forming of the Los Angeles Reparations Commission. I don't say that to brag, but to mention there's a standard and tone that has been set over the past few years, really. And it's not based on feeling, but on legal precedent. A few weeks ago, I was asked to return to the Vineyard to speak on a panel about reparations. I was the only invitee to show up. It turned into a lecture. There were 3 things I lectured about. 1 was what is reparations, 2, who is eligible, 3, how are we going to get it? Task Force, I would encourage you to focus on these 3 topics. I also would like to be clear that reparations is based on legal precedent, and this particular justice claim with which you are dealing reparations is direct cash payments to descendants of American chattel slavery. Reparations is not a housing voucher or a policy change. I would also encourage you to invite Camila Moore, the chair of the Reparations Task Force, as an expert witness to also read the report from California if you haven't. And please invite Dean Erwin Chemerinsky to speak on the legal aspects and constitutional law aspects of your program. Finally, I know that sometimes for reparations programs, policy change often comes out of as a recommendation out of reparations programs, but policy change is not reparations. And if you do decide to do it, please do not get rid of the direct cash payment, but please make sure that your community knows that even though descendants of American chattel slavery are the eligible class for cash payments, policy change can impact the greater Black community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharice, for that. I think that your input, suggestions, and guidance will be helpful once we get to the stage of getting the information from the researchers. So as we move towards that, as to what the recommendations will be from this task force, your input would be invaluable. So thank you, and we would definitely look for that and welcome that in the future. Myra, I'm going to stay out of your lane and let you unmute the next person.
Yes, Reggie, you are next, and I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hey, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just a quick question. I guess it's kind of implied or maybe obvious because I don't have the RFP in front of me. Obviously, but just a quick question. is the task force responsible for selecting the researchers, or is it the city council? Just so that, you know, we're all clear on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Reggie. And the selection committee will be comprised of the subgroup members that I mentioned earlier, the 4 persons who served in that capacity on behalf of the task force, and the city representatives. And the number of city representatives will be on there. Remember, this ultimately is a city RFP, but the task force will have its members serving on that deliberation on who will serve on that. So right now there'll be 4 members who are on there from the task force. I suspect that there'll probably be 5 members on it from the city, and they will deliberate and review all of the submissions. So that's how the process would be done. So to answer your question, that that body will make the recommendation to the full task force once they've concluded their review of their proposals. Does that answer your question, Reggie?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean,
It's not going to be the city council. If you think, no, it'll be made by that process of the review by the subgroup, along with the city members, and a recommendation to the task force. What I will say to you that and I'm only taking chairman liberties at this particular time. When we get to who the selection way, and it could possibly be that there could be 1, 2, or 3 that they come down to. They don't come down to an individual person, etc. We would want to present that person to the community as well. So that process will be undertaken, but the decision making will be made at where I stated.
Okay, I guess just a quick follow-up, if I may.
Yeah.
In the event that, not saying that this will happen, but if there were a situation to where the task force members say, hey, I want to go right, members from city government say, I want to go left, are you saying that the bringing it to the community would resolve that, or do we defer to the task force, or how would that work?
No. Ask anybody who has known me to chair anything. I will say to you, if that was a result and I would say to you, Reggie, unlikely result, but things can happen. We would find a process whereby where we and I, you know, and I deem it unlikely that that's going to occur, but I would tell you we would work through a process for the selection of the RFP. Can I say to you right now what it is? No. Would it be coming to the community? The answer is no, but it will be worked out there. The bodies that appointed us have full authority. Both the city council, not appoint us, but who put together the ordinance. So I'm sure that if we had those types of concerns, we would know how to try to get them resolved. And it would be before before a proposer or proposers were presented, I would assure you, Reggie, that we will have worked through that.
And
Thank you,
Chair, if I could just add very quickly, you know, we presented on those evaluation criteria. The way this works is, you know, every proposal will be, you know, evaluated by reviewers based on those evaluation criteria, and we're going to be really sort of specific and objective with the way that the RFP process works to ensure, you know, that process is rigorous and straightforward. And so based on that, you know, because we have that criteria set and because each proposal will be evaluated based on that, it'll be pretty straightforward in terms of which proposals end up being the most advantageous in each category. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, well, and yeah, but I want to give, I also want to say to folks that you know, I don't anticipate that, but there will be a process for resolving it. And we would ultimately go to the person who put together the ordinance and also made the selection. So I'm sure that as most political things might be determined, we'll work it out, Reggie, before it got to a situation where there was a stalemate between the task force members and the city representatives. Maya?
Thank you.
All right, Naheem, I'm going to unmute you next. And then we'll have Sharice and Edward following that.
Greetings, greetings. My name is Naheem Wade. I am the president and co-founder of the United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen. My organization and myself, we are basically responsible for the resurrection of the freedmen term. We've worked with several reparations organizations across the country. We are cited by Sister Camilla Moore in the initial presentations that she gave to the California Reparations Task Force. We've given several testimonies at 4 local reparations commissions all across the country, including High Point, North Carolina. We've even spoken with several individuals close to the Boston Reparations Task Force that you all are trying to form. I'll just say that to say that we have some experience in this movement. We helped with CJEC, the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, craft the language for SB 189 to whereas you have American freedmen being used as an identifier for the first time in any piece of legislation, state or federal, since the era of Reconstruction. I'm concerned with the language that is being used in the RFP. Let me make sure I'm getting this correct. It is Black American freed people, as Antonia Edwards had raised, and as we've highlighted, the Supreme Court was clear in their ruling. And that ruling was not confined to just colleges and universities. That ruling was for affirmative action broadly. And now employers are being sent letters by lawyers coming from right-wingers who do not want to see any reparative measures take place at all, having them prove that their employees suffered, especially those that got in by affirmative action, suffered in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
Okay,
And
Mr. Wade, can I just
Yeah.
stop you for just one moment? I think
Sure.
I got the gist from Ms. Edwards of that particular concern. What I'm going to ask for us to do, because great minds will differ, is I'm going to ask our staff for the task force to raise that question with our legal counsel, the legal counsel for the city. And if we choose to make that change, we will. If not, I note your concern. I also note the concern by Antonia Edwards. And certainly as we go through this process, as I said in response to Ms. Edwards, that it's possible that researchers may come up and make the same position or argument that you're making right now, and what we've stated in the RFP will become not relevant. So why don't I leave it there? I think with your expertise, once again, and your involvement in this very important work, that I think, as I said to Ms. Edwards, you certainly will be helpful to us as we get the deliberations once we get the research. So I would ask you to please help us at that point in time as well, but I will definitely take into account and ask for our legal counsel or for the city folks to take back to the Corporation Council the question that's been raised about the utilization of Black in the RFP.
Thank you. We just wanted to be successful. That's
right.
our concern.
And I thank you for that. Like I said, there are unfortunately great minds will differ, but I think that you're making a good point, and certainly our conversations initiated before that decision. So something may have and there were viewpoints that were expressed, but we'll re-examine that based upon what you and Ms. Edwards have raised. But I definitely see by your expertise and knowledge in this area, as well as Ms. Cryer's knowledge in this area, that you will definitely be helpful to us, the task force, when we get to the deliberation stage once we receive this research. So thank you for that. It is 7:04, folks. I'm going to keep us going to about 7:15. Would like to end the meeting at that time, but I see Mr. Shore's hand is up. Is that the next person, Raya, that you were going to allow?
I had actually had Sharice before that. So Sharice and then Edward.
Well, Sharice has already spoken, so I told no. But Sharice has spoken, so I'm going to go.
Someone
No.
inboxed me and I can't respond in the chat.
Oh no, okay. I'll let you. Yeah, but I want to go to Mr. Shore. Sharice has already spoken, so let's go to Mr. Shore.
Reese, I got you. I'll take care of it.
Hi, everyone. Task Force, thank you so much for being seekers for justice, especially for, you know, all your time and your efforts that you're putting into this this reparations task force. My comment is in line with two others that went before me. One mentioned, will there be any considerations with I guess a region? You know, are you going to look within or outside the region of Boston proper? The other person, I think it was Reggie Stewart, and he asked about, you know, just who would actually, I guess, review or give out the contracts, or who would, you know, award the contracts. And those are very good questions. My concern is, in this effort, you know, when we're talking about American descendants of slavery and, you know, descendants of chattel slaves, you know, we've been a pilfered group, and in all efforts, even in this, you know, study that you guys are, you know, trying to, you know, do for, you know, for prosperity, you know, it seems like it's going to come through gates where contracts are going to be given out to other people outside of us. And my concern is the task force going to put in, you know, guidelines or anything where the descendants of chattel slavery will be actually researching and, you know, actually, you know, investigating the harms to our people. My concern is that, you know, it's just another way for, you know, this country to pilfer from us. Even in our efforts to get justice, they find ways to actually steal and you know, pull out what's owed to us, even in a study. So I just ask that in all your efforts, when you're talking contracts, I hear money. Who's that money going to? If it's not us, then I think it's further exacerbating the effort. So just as a task force, just keep those considerations, especially in the RFP. You can actually put in guidelines for, you know, specificity for, you know, who these contracts are, you know, going to, you know, go to, whether it be HBCUs, you know, or if it's going to go to another, you know, historian, you know, do you have an extensive background working with HBCUs or things like that? So that's the only point I wanted to make.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shore. Certainly, if in the presentation by RJ, and that definitely was a subject matter that was discussed by the subgroup, with regards to how we can make sure that we incorporate and persons who have been affected by it and by slavery and the discrimination. And we put language in there which would allow the reviewers, and that is a criteria that would be utilized as far as reviewing the proposals, that they, and the way we have stated it is that it involves persons who have been, I think the language is affected by, I can pull it up exactly, but it was a specific reference to that. We didn't use the language that you use in terms of chattel, but we did use language which will allow for a proposer, and it signals to a proposer that we want to make sure that persons who are part of your team are definitely from our community. So I think that we do that. We can't say that who, because we don't know who is going to be proposed for what institutions, what individuals, et cetera. But I can assure you that the researchers will be vigilant on the composition of teams and how they will include persons from our community in their deliberations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Carrie, is your hand up or not? I don't know. Your hand is up? Okay. I will acknowledge. Good. Carrie?
I make a motion, whether or not we can vote on it right now, but I make a motion to be documented that we change the language back to what we had, which was American freedom woman and freedmen. I think it was pretty clear that community felt consulted and felt included in that, based off of all of our previous meetings. And I think that, if this, in the light of being hyper intentional about being inclusive of community and their voices, that the motion be that we change it back to American freedmen and freedwomen. And also we were okay with that as a team before. We just wanted to be specific and wanted to make sure that there was no confusion.
Motion from a member, task force member, is there? I need a second before we can even discuss the motion. All right, well, I would say that we'll have to take it up as I suggested. I would ask that the legal counsel take a look at that and if we can, and if that determination is made, we'll make the change. If not, we have a document which has been voted, which indicates, as we said, and we're sensitive to what's been raised here, but there's no second, so I can't entertain your motion. So do I see, Meyer, are there any other hands? And I noticed that Rochelle is there. Rochelle, did you want to say something on behalf of Senator Miranda's office? Or
I can read what she put in the chat.
okay, if it's in the chat, we'll leave it in the chat. Fine. She doesn't want to say it publicly. Thank you. I know we all are diligent on this. I want to say thank you, and I hope that no one wants to be dismissive of it. Carrie, is your hand up again? All right, my dear, let's move this along. I'm not going to debate all of these issues here in this meeting. Okay. Okay. All right.
So considering that we're going to be bringing this to legal counsel, are we still going to put out, well, I don't know. I'm hearing that we're going to bring this to legal counsel. So are we still going to put this out for distribution on Monday before this is put before?
Yes, we're going to, let me tell you, they will, right now, I am sure by now, RJ and the others are going to be in contact with the legal counsel, I'm sure, prior to probably tomorrow, but definitely prior to that. The RFP will issue. It will either issue if legal counsel gives a legal opinion that the concerns that have been expressed as to how it might be impacted from the standpoint of the possibility of lawsuit. Because quite frankly, folks, what we do here, and if we come with an outcome that somebody got to pay something, we're going to be sued anyhow. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not worried about a single word. That's not going to be the basis. When we come up and say, you did it, you benefit from it, you owe, that's going to be the lawsuit. So I'm not going to quibble over this. So to answer your question, they'll ask legal counsel. If legal counsel doesn't give an answer which says, oh, it really has to be changed, then it's going to go forward as we voted it, because that's the vote, and it'll be dealt with on the back end.
Okay.
But it will go out on Monday.
Okay.
The RFP will go out on Monday.
Legal counsel will have consulted it by Monday.
The RFP will go out on Monday. Yes, legal counsel will have been spoken to, will be given the question that was presented here as to whether that language creates a legal concern. That's what we voted on. I understand the concerns have been expressed here. Legal counsel will say, yes, I think the language should be changed because you subject yourself to a lawsuit. If legal counsel says, yeah, there's a difference of opinion, let the RFP go based upon the vote was taken, that's what happens. So legal counsel will make that determination on whether it's changed, but the issuance of it will take place on Monday.
Take care of it by Monday.
All right. Seeing no other business that's here, is there anything in the chat, Maya, that I need to entertain? All right, well then, in terms of, thank you very much all. I look forward to the participation in the future. there may be, you may hear of, and we'll discuss, there may be some additional sessions in terms of presentations by some of you folks who are scholarly in this area, some conversations while this deliberation is going on. We'll think through all of that. We're very sensitive to the time that people want to expend. Certainly, you're going to have the documents. You can communicate on boston.com. Am I correct, RJ? They can communicate with the task force, with Lori, with RJ.
Well, boston.gov.
Boston.gov.
The email address
then,
is reparations@boston.gov if you want to send anything.
Yeah, and we will deliberate on those. We'll pass it on. But at the moment, what we want to be able to do is, because of what we were tasked with, is to meet that phase one, which says, do the research, come up with a recommendation, and then from there, we'll have, it'll be, your input will be invaluable as we shape what we feel should be what should be addressed as far as what occurred, and what reparations should be deliberated on, and how, and to whom, and all those processes that Sharice mentioned, for sure. I'm certainly will be on the table. So thank you very much, folks. I'm going to consider this meeting adjourned. It is now 7:15. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the evening, great weekend, and stay focused on it. Please communicate with us through reparations@boston.gov. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.